Joanna Jędrzejczyk did not lose her championship because she suddenly became less skilled or because the division passed her overnight. For years, she represented absolute control inside the octagon. Her success was built on discipline, preparation, and an almost emotionless approach to fighting.
A real statement to the rest of the strawweight division.
Key is constant pressure, but to execute the kind of game plan Gadelha is executing, it takes a tremendous amount.
She did not rush. She did not panic. She did not chase moments of glory. Instead, Joanna trusted her system completely. She relied on distance management, volume striking, and mental pressure to slowly break opponents down. From the outside, her fights sometimes looked simple, but inside the cage, they were exhausting puzzles for anyone facing her. Challengers were forced to fight at her pace, on her terms, and under constant pressure.
Cardio.
Jędrzejczyk snapping off the jab here. Nice combination, able to land.
And that's what she's known for. You send one punch.
Fourth title defense.
Right there. Beautiful
Jędrzejczyk. Like a speed advantage for the champion here early.
But so far, Andrade is walking through everything.
And Jędrzejczyk is doing a great job of actually mixing up the target, not just headhutting, going to the body with that jab, going to the body with that right hand. And when she...
This level of control created an aura that made Joanna appear untouchable. But dominance, when sustained long enough, can quietly plant the seed for one critical decision that changes everything. Joanna's style was never about explosive knockouts or wild aggression. It was about repetition, accuracy, and discipline over time. She understood that winning at the highest level was not about moments, but about consistency. Round after round, she maintained balance, posture, and composure. Even when opponents landed clean shots, Joanna rarely abandoned her structure. She trusted her conditioning and preparation to carry her through every exchange. Mentally, this gave her a massive advantage. Opponents grew frustrated when they could not break her rhythm or force emotional reactions. Instead of reacting, Joanna responded with calculated pressure. This approach allowed her to dominate a division while taking relatively controlled risks. She did not need to prove toughness because she avoided unnecessary damage. This version of Joanna was defined by restraint, and restraint was the foundation of her championship reign. However, prolonged dominance can subtly change how a fighter views risk. When success becomes routine, confidence can slowly turn into comfort. Over time, Joanna began to believe she could afford to engage more aggressively. She did not abandon her skills, but she adjusted how often she chose to stay in exchanges. Instead of disengaging early, she allowed fights to become more competitive. This decision did not appear dangerous at first. After all, she was still winning. But the philosophy had changed. Control was no longer the priority in every moment. Joanna started accepting damage that her earlier version would have avoided without hesitation. She trusted toughness, pride, and durability more than distance management. This shift was subtle, but at the elite level, subtle changes carry heavy consequences.
Jędrzejczyk lead leg effectively does so again there.
Third night. Oh, beautiful inside low kick.
Jędrzejczyk smiling, fighting southpaw here.
Once that decision was made, fights began demanding more from her physically and mentally. Exchanges lasted longer. Damage accumulated more frequently. Opponents sensed opportunities where none existed before. Joanna remained elite, but the margins that protected her began to shrink. What were once controlled performances slowly transformed into high-output battles. These wars earned respect and admiration, but they also carried a cost. Recovery became harder. Wear and tear became visible. The aura of invincibility quietly faded, not because she lacked skill, but because control was no longer absolute. This is how championship reigns usually end, not with a sudden collapse, but through repeated decisions that slowly erode the foundation that once made a fighter dominant. Joanna's career did not collapse after one fight. Instead, the trajectory changed. She was still competitive against the best in the world, but the effort required to win increased dramatically. Fights became about endurance rather than dominance. damage became part of the equation rather than something avoided. Fans admired her toughness, but toughness is not the same as control. At the highest level, every exchange carries long-term consequences. Joanna never lost her preparation, her discipline, or her work ethic. What changed was her tolerance for risk. That single philosophical adjustment followed her into future fights, shaping outcomes in ways statistics cannot fully explain. Numbers show wins and losses, but they rarely capture the decisions made under pressure that define careers. This is why greatness in combat sports is so fragile. Talent can take a fighter to the top, but restraint is what keeps them there. Joanna's story is not one of failure, but of how thin the line truly is at the championship level. Even the most disciplined fighters face moments where emotion challenges structure. Pride, competitiveness, and belief can push champions to take risks they once avoided. When that happens, control begins to slip. Joanna learned this lesson not against lesser competition, but against the very best in the world. Her fights remained elite, but they demanded more sacrifice with every appearance. The price of that decision was paid gradually, not instantly. Joanna Jędrzejczyk's legacy remains strong. She is remembered as one of the most dominant champions her division has ever seen. But her career also serves as a reminder that championships are not only defended with skill, they are defended with discipline, restraint, and the ability to walk away from unnecessary exchanges. Once restraint weakens, outcomes become unpredictable. Control is not automatic. It must be chosen repeatedly, especially when pressure demands aggression. Joanna's story reflects how even champions must constantly protect what made them great. When that protection fades, everything changes. In the end, Joanna did not lose her legacy. She lost something more subtle. She lost the version of herself that prioritized control above all else. That is the quiet truth behind many championship stories. Careers are not defined only by victories and defeats, but by decisions made in moments where restraint is tested. Joanna's journey reminds us that at the highest level, greatness is fragile. One adjustment, one philosophical shift, is sometimes enough to reshape everything that follows. This is not a story about weakness. It is a story about how much control truly matters. Because in elite competition, everything can change with one decision.